Hey, do you offer organic lawn care? Hey, we're going to discuss it on this edition of the Pest Geek Podcast. Pull out your hose and grab your can. We're about to integrate another Pest Geek Podcast. Hi, everybody. Frank Hernandez here, and welcome to the Pest Geek Podcast, bringing you the latest news, products, and politics from today's leading industry pros, offering you their technical marketing and growth strategies to give you, the pest management professional, that killer edge. Hi there, folks. Welcome to another edition of the Pest Geek Podcast. This is Frank Hernandez, your Pest Geek. Hey, we're going to be discussing organic lawn care and organic gardening on this edition of the Pest Geek Podcast. I hope you had an awesome weekend. Very relaxing weekend for me. It usually is. I try not to do too much on the weekends, not to be overly active, and just had a great weekend. And we're going to be discussing, I talked before about organic or natural pest control, and we're going to be looking at organic gardening, really what it is, and part of what is required to do organic services. And there are ways that can be done, and there are things that can't be done. It's like everything. There is no one solution for everything. But before that, I wanted to give a special shout out to Brian Jones, who lives in Woodstock, Georgia. He is a sales and technician at Hole in One Pest Control Solutions. So he liked the podcast. Hey, a special shout out to you, my friend. Glad you enjoyed it and that you continue to listen. And for those of you who are on Facebook, you can look up Pest Geek Podcast. We also have a news feed on Twitter. You can look up at Pest Geek Podcast on Twitter and on the World Wide Web at pestgeekpodcast.com. So check us out. Check out what we're doing. Check out the past podcasts. They're all there. We're also on Stitcher Radio, and we are on iTunes. You can look up Pest Geek Podcast on iTunes or Stitcher Radio. If you are using an Android device, if you're an Apple guy, look us up there on iTunes. So I get a call from a customer, and I get these quite frequently, but this one asked me, do we do organic lawn care and organic, pest control and fertilizing and all this stuff for the garden, and they want to go with organics. And this one is actually much harder than the organic pest control for residential or commercial properties. And I always ask the question why it is that they want to do this. They don't want anything unnatural in their garden, and they want to have everything organic. They don't want any synthetic chemicals in their yard. And I have to always do a consultation, because if you're in up north or in the Midwest or in Texas, a lot of big things is lawn, very little shrubs, very little ornamentals. Or over here in South Florida, and the part we're living in, it's mainly ornamentals. I do very little, big lawn properties. Mostly are a lot of ornamental plants. And when somebody installs a garden, they never consider the things that they would consider if they were an actual master gardener, or if they were an agriculturist, or if they were a nursery person growing plants. And that's understanding the soil biology, understanding that plant, and is that plant a native plant, or is that plant exotic? And most of what is planted down here is exotic. Now, what's the difference between native and exotic? Well, native is it's most likely from that area or that region or that state or the country. It's adapted to the weather. It's adapted to lots of things. Exotic is just simply not from here. So it was never from here. It was brought in, and it's grown. And a lot of things do well that are exotics that grow well here in Florida, but others don't. And others bring in, we import probably more pests into South Florida than any other state. And the reason for it is we have the majority of the product that comes through here are flowers. Just about 95% of the flowers that are brought into this country come through South Florida. Something like 85% of all the perishable goods come in through South Florida. We have 2 ports. We have 2 international airports with international travel to the Caribbean and Central and South America. So we probably get on average several insects a year. I think the number is somewhere like around 12, the last study on average that comes in per year. And they don't bring in with them their natural enemies. That's one of the things. Our soil is a calcareous soil, so it's high in calcium carbonate. It's very alkaline, and a lot of plants that people install prefer a more acid soil. So they have trouble adapting. They have nutritional deficiencies, and unless you can fix the soil biology through amending it somehow, it becomes very difficult because we have this sandy soil. We don't have a ton of organic matter in our soil. As a matter of fact, most of the communities I do business in are modern communities that have some of these have about 10 feet of basically rock and fill underneath them, which is nothing more than limestone, and which has calcium carbonate. So you might have maybe 2 to 4 inches of topsoil, and that's it. The rest is neutralized. And that topsoil, or the organic matter in that soil, is quickly neutralized by our soil. So people here want to do organic stuff, and they want to do organic stuff in their garden, but they don't realize the amount of work that it actually takes to control pests, to control diseases, to the nutritional deficiencies they have to deal with. When I was taking my to become a certified horticultural specialist, and I was taking my training at our local college here, great professor, man, just an awesome guy, has 2 masters and a doctorate, and guy really knows his stuff, and took us to an organic fruit farm for a field trip. And we were going through this organic farm, and the first thing that looked out to me is the fruit looks really horrible. And I asked, why does the fruit doesn't look like the one in the supermarket? And he says, this is real organic fruit. The stuff that you find in the supermarket has been treated with so many chemicals and stuff to make it aesthetically appealing for sale. This stuff would never sell in a supermarket. And he says, let me explain. My customers are not retail customers. They are fine restaurants, some of the finest restaurants in the city. And the chefs order my fruit. And my fruit is only sold in season. So when the fruit is not in season, I can't get it to them. So we only sell fruit that's in season. And because they're going to use it in preparation for their food, the customer never sees it. If the customer ever saw it, he would never buy it. But because it is of such high quality, great flavor, consistency, they will wait for my fruit and only sell it if it's in season. So I asked, what is it that you do for pest control? Because I'm a pest control operator. And I said, what do you do for pest control in this farm? And he says, we do nothing but spray it with compost tea and use compost. That's it. This is all we use. And he said, he explained that it took him years, almost 10 years, to get this farm together because it was previously a non-organic farm. And to get it certified, it took him about 7 years because you cannot have pesticides in the soil, or the property cannot be sprayed with synthetic pesticides that are not compliant with organic production for at least 7 years. So in those 7 years, you have to do things and amend things and do things to keep those pests off until the soil and the biology and the natural predators are there and natural insects. And this is things that most people who live in urban communities, who live in big cities, have no clue about. They think it's just about, well, we're just going to switch now from a synthetic over instantly to an organic product, and we're going to just get these miraculous results. and nothing could be further. But the thing that most people don't understand is that they buy plants from a nursery environment. And in a nursery environment, in a greenhouse or a grower, a lot of people buy it from a reseller, of plants. They don't buy it from the actual grower. In the nursery business, you have the person that grows it and then another person from seed, and then they sell it to this other group that might just grow it from cuttings, and then they sell it to this other group, and then down the line, it's been sold like 3 or 4 times until it gets into a retailer's hand, a retail nursery, and then the retail nursery sells it to the client. And usually if it's not sold very quickly in a retail nursery, a lot of retail nurseries down here don't do very good pest control. The way they do it in the grower, or the way they would do it from seeds, and they have to prepare the seeds and all this. And when you put that into the ground, all bets are off, because it was grown in organic matter, dealing with, all these things. And now you put it into the soil that is deficient of everything, and everything changes. So they want to do organic, gardening, and they want me to switch over to these organic products. And what they fail to understand, that in order for you to be able to do that, all the soil and this is not going to happen overnight. There is no such thing as all of a sudden I switched and now we're organic and now everything is just peachy. In an organic environment, and especially like in a nursery or greenhouse, those things are inspected daily. They start finding whiteflies, they start immediately treating. They start finding an outbreak of a disease, and they're immediately treating for that disease. It's not like a program where I come every 2 months, I'm going to apply this organic product miraculously to your garden, and you're just going to be awed by it. See, it's not the way it works. So what people want is a switch again from a synthetic product to a natural product, not realizing there's no residuals. If you wanted to do real organic fertilizing, you would have to do composting. You would have to use worm castings. People think of, that's just disgusting. Yeah. Or organic gardening is disgusting if you don't appreciate that. And people, they go online, we're going to get a compost barrel and make our own compost in our yard. I said, look, I live in Miami. This is a $750,000 home, $500,000 home in a community that is a gated community. And if you tried to use organic products, they're going to take you to the center of town. They're going to hang you, quarter you, and drown you. Because if you've used most of the products like kelp, it has an odor. If you use a product like fish emulsion, which is great for amending soil and controlling insects, it has an odor. If you use composting, it has an odor. And you want an organic product that doesn't have any odors. Real organic products have odors. Not to mention flies and different types of flies that could get into your house, and now you have a drain fly problem, or you have a fruit fly problem, because there's just flies all over this product. And naturally it gets taken care of and the ecology corrects itself and all this, but people want no insects in their yard. And I get calls and say, I want to treat for mosquitoes, I want to treat for this, but I want to use a natural product. And what they don't want is, they don't want a product that's going to harm their environment, give them allergic reactions and all this, but they're not really considering the ecosystem of what it takes to have a balanced ecosystem in an organic garden. I don't want the worms, but I want butterflies. You see? And that's what happens with organics, is they really don't understand the depth of what it is they are asking. And I have to immediately say, look, we do environmentally responsible pest control. We do integrated pest management. And this is how it works. We treat plants this way and we treat trees this way because it produces a better result with less contamination. But the fact that we're going to use always a natural, I know there are companies down here that do it, but they're there every week. And they're spraying that entire property every week with natural products. People will come to me and say, well, what about, I wanted natural pest control for my lawn? I said, I don't have products that are naturally going to control your weeds. People say, well, I read an article and I read a post about using gluten cornmeal. And I said, yes, gluten cornmeal will work at preventing a lot of weeds. But how much of it do you need to apply per 1,000 square feet? It's like 20 pounds of this stuff per a couple 100 feet. Have you considered how expensive corn gluten meal is? And can you get it here? Second, it won't work at established weeds, especially if they become now perennials. See, they don't understand the difference between annual and perennial weeds. It will prevent them, but it's not going to control a lot of species. Well, I want natural grub control. Then we start getting into biologicals. And I say, look, you get into, do you understand biologicals? And the minute I say biologicals, I lost them. That's it. The conversation was over. You lost me at biological. Why? Because biologicals have a negative connotation. They are associated with biological warfare. They're associated with the Middle East. They're associated with all the things going on in subway systems around the country. And when you start talking about biological pathogens to control insects, people freak out. See, it is the ignorance that is in the marketplace. In fact, that we have so much information. The problem is there's so much bad information out there. And people don't go to good resources like their local state university, which has a great entomology and horticulture and everything program. They don't go to their extension service to look for this information, to get the information. They go on the web on their lunch break while they're driving and Google organic pest control, and they read 3 articles. Now they're an expert on organic pest control. They're an expert in organic gardening because they read 3 posts from this guy supposedly who's an expert. Well, you probably didn't read the other 300 posts that he has there that explains how the process is. And that's what you need to, if you're getting, because this is becoming more and more popular. This is becoming something that I get regular calls on. It isn't, this used to be sporadic. I get 2 types of customers. Those that want me to use the strongest thing possible and those that don't want me to use anything possible. And we tend to go to those extremes as a society. So, I could do organic weed control. I just would have to buy a semi-trailer at 4 miles to a gallon of burning diesel to carry all the gluten cornmeal that I would need to treat all my properties. You see, it isn't feasible. And then what they do is they say, well, I read that you could buy this product and do it. And I read on this, this company that makes this natural product that I guess says you can apply it. And that's right, you can apply it. But when it comes to what it's actually going to cost you for me to apply it, it's a whole different matter. And they because these companies are talking about, how you can save hundreds of dollars by doing it yourself, and how the chemical is so cheap, and how it's all natural, and there's no toxicity. And again, they don't understand the difference between allergic reactions and acute toxicity. And this is becoming more and more, and it's going to become, to some people, a thorn in their side, because they're going to have to deal with this and saying, I'm getting all this pressure to do organic and natural, and all I am is a spray company. And there are a lot of people who are still spray companies. Okay? And that is the issue with when I start looking at, like Spinoza for mosquito control, and I start looking at Bacillus, BTI for mosquito control. And I tell people, we're going to apply this bacteria to these plants. And what's going to happen is that bacteria is going to, oh my God, no, because, my children are out there and bacteria are, negative. And with organic gardening, what actually improves the soil biology is having good bacteria in the soil. Having good bacteria, like the bacteria you find in worm urine, where you take the liquid and then you spray that on your plants, and it's from the worm, and it's the urine from the worm. It's known as worm urine. Just sounds really weird for people that have never done it, but it works. But you have to do it over and over. And then here's the other problem. Here's the big, probably the biggest deal breaker that you're not going to be able to do real organic, real pest control in a lot of modern cities and a lot of modern communities. Unless you live in Texas, where you probably have acres and acres of land. When you live in an urban environment like I live in, where the average home is somewhere between, the average lot is somewhere between 6,000 and 8,000 square feet, where the house is 2,000 to 3,000 to 3,500 square feet, and you have a separation between one house and another of 10 feet in what is known as zero lot homes. And you want to do organics, and you go and buy all these bunch of beetles. And then your next door neighbor has a spray company and he comes and sprays it. He's going to kill them all because you're going to get drift. If you go and apply biological products where you're trying to build up your soil bacteria, and all of a sudden your neighbor sprayed, that bacteria is gone. See, you can't really do it yet. And this is my point. I'm not discouraged. I'm not trying to be despairing. But you have to be knowing the science behind it and the biology behind it and the chemistry behind it in order to be effective. It isn't about changing products. It's about a whole mindset, a whole new education level, a whole new paradigm shift that has to occur in society, and especially your society where you live, in order for this to work. Now, what have cities and counties and countries that they've done this citywide? The problem is they're doing it. I've seen it done in parts of Canada where there's pretty much, they are forced to do it because they are very restricted in the amount of products they are allowed to have. So companies, whole neighborhoods have said, we are a zero synthetic pesticide neighborhood. But now, if you don't bring in the good biology and you don't introduce it to the whole neighborhood, you're really going to start having a whole bunch of battle with things that you can't control. Because you cannot just simply cease from doing an activity. You have to then do other activities that are positive to what it is that you want to do. And that is my point with these issues of natural. And I've sat down with, guys that have PhDs and that handle biological products. And tell me, in a nursery environment, most of these products are sold to nurseries. Most of these products are sold in agriculture. They're not sold in residential or commercial applications. Because you can't do it if you can't control the entire environment around you. And it is about changing the entire environment, not replacing a chemical. So I hope this helps you guys in this matter in understanding a little bit more about biologicals, understanding about how organic landscaping works, and how to be able to get this done. So until next time, folks, you have a great one. Thank you for listening to the Pest Geek Podcast. If you have enjoyed the Pest Geek Podcast, please give us a rating, write a review, or subscribe to the channel. You can join the Pest Geek Society by visiting pestgeekpodcast.com. Thank you for listening. See you next time.